Mercer. I'm the 2021 president of the JAX Chamber Health Council, and welcome to our June meeting. And I think most of you were on, but for those that weren't, I'm happy to announce that this will be our last regularly scheduled virtual meeting. So I tried to go back and count, and I think it's been about the last 14 or 15 meetings that we've had have been virtually. So probably since around March of last year, like everybody else, once things shut down, we did the same. And so I'm happy to announce that starting next month, so for our July meeting, which will be the 8th of July, we will be back in person in Deerwood Country Club. So we are all looking forward to that. I know our members are looking forward to that, and it will be nice to see all of you in person again since it's been so long. It's been over a year. Hard to believe, but it has been over a year. The Health Council is one of the councils that are in the chamber that are responsible for promoting health and wellness issues in the Jacksonville community. And so we've had a lot of great speakers do that, and I'm sure Michael will do that as well today with his topic. So next slide, Kathy. Here's our agenda for today. I've got a couple of other announcements that I just wanted to talk about. We'll have some announcements from Tina Robbins related to the chamber. We'll turn it over to Michael and listen to him talk for a little while. And then depending on how much time we have at the end, we will possibly have some time to do some breakout sessions and some virtual networking. I get it, it's not as fun as networking in person, but we still want to do it because there are people that join that are either new members and haven't met all of us, or even some guests that may not be as familiar with the council or our membership. And then we'll come back together for some reminders, and I'll really harp on reminding everybody that we'll be in person for the July meeting. So again, just to talk about that for a minute, because it has been a while, and Deerwood they're doing things a little bit differently than what we're used to. We are going to ask everybody for the July meeting to pre-register. I know in the past, especially when we've been in person, we've had a lot of people walk up on the day of the meeting, and because of Deerwood's request to give them a good number as far as how much food they're going to need, and then also they've got some measures where they're asking us to provide a list to the guard shack. So if you've been to Deerwood, there's a guard shack when you drive into the country club. So they've asked for a list of everybody that is going to be there. So we're asking that everybody please pre-register before the July meeting so that we can make sure, one, we've got a good count for the number of food and the amount of food that we need, and then two, to make sure that everybody's on the list. We don't want anybody to be turned away. We're going to talk to them and make sure that we are in good communication with them so that no one does get turned away. But please try to pre-register if you can. If for some reason you pre-register and then can't make it, we'll obviously work with you to apply that payment to a future meeting, or if you can't make it, refund it if it needs to be or whatever. So don't let that be a barrier to pre-registering. Thank you. So I want to take a minute to recognize our board of directors. We always do this. These are the people that make everything happen for the council behind the scenes. As I mentioned, I'm the president. And I really, the main reason I like to share this slide each meeting is to let anyone who is attending know these are the people that you can reach out to if you have questions about the council, about getting more involved with the council, about speaking to the council, anything that you, or feedback really, anything that you want to talk to us about related to the Health Council or the chamber in general, please reach out to myself or any one of these individuals on the screen here, and we can, if we don't know the answer, we'll point you in the right direction, put you in touch with Kathy or Tina, so that we can get the answer. And like I said, not only questions or how to get involved, but if you've got feedback, hey, have you thought about doing this or have you thought about doing that, we always welcome that as well. And then always like to thank our sponsors, Florida Blue and Moran Builders. These are the people that and the companies that not only contribute their funds to the council and allow us to do the things that we do, but also contribute individuals who then contribute their time to the council. So both of these companies have members on our board that go above and beyond to volunteer their time and talent to the council. So thank you, as always, to both of our sponsors. One other announcement before I turn it over to Tina that I just wanted to let everyone know. If you don't follow us on social media, please do that. And you may have seen we had our cooking event. I guess it's been a little bit over a month ago, but we were able to go to the YMCA and present the check that we raised. So in partnership with the JAX Cooking Studio, we were able to raise $600, and then Jim Satterwhite at Venture Point matched that contribution. So we were able to donate $1,200 to the Winston, it's the Winston YMCA, right? Winston YMCA's water safety program. And so that program allows youth to come and learn. It's not really swimming lessons. The way they described it, it's more of if they were to fall into a pool or a retention pond or whatever, it allows them to, basically save their lives so they can get to the edge of the pool or float on their back. And so it's obviously, if you've seen the news this week, we had a tragedy like that where someone unfortunately drowned in a retention pond. So it's obviously, we're in Florida, all around water. It's a very important cause. And we were more than happy to be able to raise money for that and donate money toward that. So I wanted to thank Florida Blue. I wanted to thank Moran Builders for that. They each participated in that. I wanted to thank JAX Cooking Studio, who also was the one that helped us put on the class, and they donated part of the proceeds to that. And then obviously thank all of our board members and especially for their matching contributions. And with that, I'm going to quit talking and I'm going to turn it over to Tina Robbins for some chamber announcements and events.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you so much, Jason. And also, thanks again to Jim Satterwhite over at Venture Point. You have such a big heart. Thank you for matching that. That's incredible. We do appreciate your generosity. Well, good afternoon once again, everyone. On June 10th, we are hosting our Beaches Luncheon State of the Port update. Our keynote speaker will be our infamous Robert Peak with JAXPort. We're going to be hosting this at the Casa Marina Hotel. All the fun begins at noon until 1:30. It'll be a beautiful luncheon. Please pre-register. And also, our spotlight speaker will be Chris Eccles. He is the Chief Executive Officer over at AIT Environmental Technology. He's also one of our newest trustees. On June 17th, we are hosting our Coffee on the Coast with Inside Out Chiropractic. This begins at 8 a.m., a wonderful continental breakfast. It's going to take place at 808 3rd Street, Neptune Beach. It's only $5 for advanced registration. So please contact Kathy if you'd like to come. This is in person. We'd love to see you. And also the Casa Marina is in person as well. So please come and network and have lots of fun. And also, if you have any questions in regards to membership, or you know someone who'd like to join our chamber or especially join our health council, please know, we'd love to help you. Thank you so much and good afternoon. And here is our beautiful board member, Miss Ashley.
Hello, everyone. Thank you. It's great to see you guys. I can't wait to see you in person so I can shake your hands or hug you or whatever it is. I am super excited today to introduce our special guest, Michael Meyers. Michael is very interesting young man, and he came to me highly recommended from Nina Waters at the nonprofit center, or not the nonprofit, Northeast, the Community Foundation. Community Foundation. Yes, of Northeast Florida, I'm sorry. So anyway, Michael Meyers, trained as a lawyer, is an active board member and trusted advisor to a number of for-profit and nonprofit organizations. In 2016, he retired from 23 years at Orrick Herrington Sutcliffe, an international law firm where he practiced corporate and finance law, mostly in the energy sector. Mr. Meyers served as first chair for the board for the LGBTQ Community Fund of Northeast Florida, initially the Giving Circle, and now a Field Interest Fund. In 2017, the fund partnered with the Williams Institute, a leading research center on sexual orientation and gender identity law and public policy at UCLA School of Law. This partnership allowed them to conduct a Jacksonville Area Community Assessment about the composition, experiences, and needs of Northeast Florida's LGBTQ community. Mr. Meyers led this effort for the fund, and the results were then published in 2018, in June of 2018. In other nonprofit work, he currently serves as a member of the board for the Community Foundation of Northeast Florida, the Bowles School, and the Peter Michael Foundation, which focuses on prostate cancer research and treatment. In the for-profit sector, Mr. Meyers serves as the director for the Peter Michael Winery, a premium California winery, and manages and as a managing member of the ML Venture Investment, a family company. In the public arena, Mr. Meyers serves on the Juvenile Justice Advisory Committee appointed by State Attorney Melissa Nelson, and on the Diversion Transition Committee, which helps to implement the JJAC recommended to transition youth diversion programming from the State Attorney's Office of Jacksonville to the Kids Hope Alliance. Previously, Mr. Meyer chaired the board for the Discovery School in Jacksonville Beach and served on the board for the ACLA of Florida. Mr. Meyers resides in Jacksonville Beach with his husband, Chad Labens, and 15-year-old twins, a boy and a girl, who we have learned. So we are thrilled to have you, and this is all kind of in conjunction with Pride Month. So, you know, we are at the Health Council trying to really think outside of the box a little bit on some of the speakers and the topics that we have. And topics like this sometimes can be difficult to navigate, but with a little bit of talking with Mr. Meyers, with a couple of community, front runners in the LGBTQ community, I realized that this is a topic that needs to be talked about, and it definitely is part of the Health Council's mission to move the needle a little bit. So, Mr. Meyers, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you very much, Ashley. That's a really nice introduction, and thank you. So let's see, Kathy, you gonna be sharing the screen for me? Okay, great, thank you. This is the technology part is not my strong suit. So I'm really happy to be here today to talk with you about the Jacksonville Area Community Assessment that surveyed the LGBTQ community in Jacksonville. I think what Ashley and what we talked about was doing questions and comments at the end, though if anyone has something during the middle, I'm always happy to do it whenever. So to start, I'm from the LGBT Community Fund for Northeast Florida. It's a field of interest fund housed at the Community Foundation for Northeast Florida. The fund was formed in 2014 and has made over $750,000 in grants to not-for-profits, ranging from Jasmine to the Nonprofit Center to the UNF LGBT Center, to Elder Source, among others. So I was the first chair of the fund and headed up the efforts that we're going to talk about today. So a couple of initial points just to start. So one, the analysis and views that I expressed today are my own. They're not a position of the LGBTQ Fund or the Community Foundation. And today we're going to talk about slices of the survey results. The overall survey covered a number of other areas, including health, religious practices, relationships. that we're not going to talk about today. I'd be happy to talk about them because they're also interesting, but today we're kind of going to focus on the business side of things. And then I've simplified the terms to be, and they differ slightly, but only very slightly from the Williams terms. So the LGBTQ is the kind of common way of talking about it today. So lesbian, gay, bisexual, being the sort of sexual orientation pieces, trans being the main gender identity one, and then it's now expanded to Q and kind of defining everybody else. That is a fairly small percentage, but that's the simplified terminology. So a few years ago, a group of us were talking about the lack of data on the LGBTQ community in Jacksonville. There hadn't been any comprehensive survey done in many years, if ever. I mean, we were finding stuff going back to like the late 2008, 2009. We ended up getting connected to the Williams Institute, which is the leading independent researcher on sexual orientation and gender identity law and public policy in the US. So they really just focus on these issues. They're housed at the UCLA School of Law. It turns out, happily, that Williams was interested in these issues in the South, and so they agreed to help us with the survey. So the process that Williams recommended was that we form a community advisory board, or CAB, so a group of local people to serve on a board to provide input on what we in the community wanted to know, to help get community buy-in to participating in the survey, and then to help publicize the results and implement the areas for change as a result of the survey. So we formed the CAB, ran the survey from August to November of 2017, held a series of community workshops in early 2018, and published the survey in June 2018, which this is the cover of it. We ended up with 671 completed surveys, enough so that the results are statistically meaningful according to the experts at Williams. While the data is a couple years old at this point, our sense is that the results are still valid, as we've not seen too much change in Jacksonville over this period, and we've had the year when almost the whole world stopped due to COVID. So we'll start with the demographics. The survey respondents were diverse by age, sex, gender, sexual orientation, and gender identity. 54% of the respondents were under the age of 45, compared to 46% of adults overall in Jacksonville. So it's a somewhat younger group than the overall Jacksonville population. Almost 72% of the respondents were white, non-Hispanic. 13.5% were Black or African American, and about 8% were Hispanic or Latino, Latina. Compared to the overall population in Jacksonville, whites are overrepresented and Blacks underrepresented in each case by about 6 percentage points. The respondents were nearly evenly split between male and female. 70% of the respondents identify as lesbian or gay, while nearly 18% identify as bisexual. So turning to what I call the good news side of the demographics, 56% of the respondents reported having a bachelor's, graduate, or professional degree, compared to about 25% of the overall Jacksonville population. So the survey respondents, had over double the higher degrees of the overall Jacksonville population. In terms of employment, almost 3/4 are in the paid workforce compared to 57% of the general Jacksonville population. Turning to income, almost 55% reported incomes of $50,000 or over, with 24% reporting incomes of $100,000 or more. So taking this together, both from an employer's and customer perspective, there's a significant portion of the LGBTQ community that's highly educated and financially successful, so that they're of interest to the business community here. At the same time, we need to look at part of the LGBTQ community that is hurting. Nearly 1/4 of respondents were poor or nearly poor based on federal poverty thresholds, with 1 in 10 living below the federal poverty level. Food insecurity is, in simple terms, not knowing where your next meal is coming from. 1 in 5 survey respondents or other adult household member cut or skipped meals during the 12-month period because there was not enough money for food. Among those who had this experience, almost 4 in 10 reported that it happened almost every month. So what we see overall is almost 2 different communities, one significantly successful and one struggling. So now I want to turn to something very relevant to you as employers, whether your employees are out or whether they can say they bring their full selves to work and whether it matters. In the survey, over half of LGB respondents were out to their current boss or supervisor, while over 1/4 were not out at all, so about half being out. In one place where African-American responses differed materially, about half of LGB respondents were not out to their bosses or supervisor. So much more closeted and essentially the reverse of the overall responses. Then moving on to coworkers, 85% of the LGB respondents reported to being out to some or all of their coworkers, while 15% were out to none. So so this is LGB, and then we'll look over at the trans side, and there 44% say they are not out to their boss or coworkers, and then about 2/3 were out to some or all of their coworkers, and 1/3 being out to none. So trans employees are more closeted than the LGB employees. What's then interesting to me, that if you take the LGB respondents, then basically how they're accepted in the workplace. And for LGB people, about 3/4 are accepted by their boss or supervisor, while about 1/4 is not. Of their coworkers, it's almost 100%, 98%. On the trans side, it is more mixed, and it's about split 50-50 about whether their boss or supervisor is accepting, and about 70% of their coworkers are accepting. So my takeaway from this for LGBTQ workers is to seriously consider coming out at work, because the acceptance levels are pretty high. For employers, in the next step, I'd like to tell you why being out is important. So in the survey, nearly 8 in 10 respondents reported that their sexual orientation and gender identity were an important part of their identity. Eight in 10 reported that being an LGBTQ person is an important part of their lives. Finally, 2 in 3 respondents reported that to know who they are as people, others need to know that they are LGBTQ. So the message from the LGBTQ community is our identity is important, and you need to know this about us. Finally, I want to turn to broader community perceptions. So nearly 3 in 4 respondents reported that they had experienced what is termed everyday discrimination within the past year. And I'll define that for you, but how you read this is the 0 column means somebody did not have any experiences, and then the rest of the respondents said 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times in the last year. And everyday discrimination is a term used in surveys like this. It describes a set of specific events, including being treated with less courtesy or respect than other people, receiving poorer service than other people at restaurants or stores, having people act as if they think you're not as smart as others, having people act as if they're afraid of you, and being threatened or harassed. In fairness, this is a self-perception, so it may not be accurate in all cases. And the reasons they felt it happened included sexual orientation, race, sex, age, or gender expression. About half of the people who had experienced this reported they thought it was because of their sexual orientation. And I guess, at least to me, to have 3 out of 4 people surveyed say that they felt mistreated over the past year is not really what we're all trying to do as a community. Respondents were also asked whether Jacksonville is a place that embraces diversity and whether they would recommend Jacksonville to LGBTQ people considering a move to the area. And basically 50% of the respondents said Jacksonville is not a place that embraces diversity, while 40% said they would not recommend Jacksonville as a place for LGBTQ people to move to. The shorthand way I refer to this is that half of the LGBTQ people who participated in the survey said that Jacksonville's not a welcoming place. Again, that, in my view, is not what we're trying to do as a community. So next, I want to show you one data point that is not from the survey that I'm talking about, but is from a different survey that I just think this is kind of interesting, and it was very surprising to me. But so every 2 years, Duval County high school seniors and juniors participate in a survey termed the Youth Behavioral Risk Survey, or YRBO. It surveys a whole bunch of different behaviors of high school juniors and seniors, ranging from sex to, alcohol use, drug use, all kinds of different things. So since 2013, it has included a question on LGB orientation. And in Duval County, it has not and does not include a T question, so just LGB. And in 2013, 9.4% of youth identified as LGB. In 2019, 18.7% identified as LGB. So it basically, the number doubled over that period. I don't think we know exactly what this means, but I think the message I take away is that at least the number of youth identifying as different in their sexual orientation is increasing and increasing materially. So it is a subset of our overall populations. What this means for you as employers and business owners is that LGB, and I would expand that to include T people, are going to be a significant part of the business landscape going forward and create an opportunity and a risk. An opportunity to grow business by making your business welcoming, and a risk of losing business by ignoring or even offending the group. So what are my takeaways from the survey? What things are happening in our community as a result of the survey, and what might you consider doing? First, a significant portion of the LGBTQ community is young, educated, and successful financially. So interesting as employees and potential employees and customers and potential customers. Two, lots of people still are not out at work, though when they come out, generally they are accepted. 2/3 of the respondents said to know them as people, others need to know they're LGBTQ. And a significant portion of the LGBTQ population feels personally mistreated and that Jacksonville is not a welcoming place. So what are some things going on in Jacksonville in this space? So I got this data late, but so the HRO, which the Human Rights Ordinance, was passed in Jacksonville in 2017. And then it was, you may recall, repassed in 2020 due to a technical issue with the original ordinance. So what happened with the HRO since 2018? There were 5 complaints of employment discrimination based on sexual orientation. 3 of them were mediated and successfully settled, and then 2 did not go forward. So that's on the employment side. On the housing side, there were 2 complaints based on sexual orientation, and neither was substantiated. And there have been no public accommodation complaints. So those were the 3 areas. And I don't like 5 over 4, or I guess a total of 7 over 4 years. I think you'd have to drill down, or we would have to figure out what that means. It could mean there's no discrimination, and so there's nothing to talk about. Elsewhere in the survey, in the Williams survey, a lot of people who felt like they were discriminated against generally didn't pursue it, either for a variety of reasons. So I don't take from that there's not things going on, but that is a possible, interpretation. So the HRO is one piece, and then let's see, Baptist, coming out of the survey specifically due to it, Baptist developed a whole series of strategy to improve health and wellness in the LGBT community. This primarily involves setting up support groups to help address addictions, mental health, advocacy, community resources, and similar things. Nearly all participants in those support groups reported very favorably on the value of the group activities. They also added resources to their website, which we're looking at here, and regularly host community information events, including today a virtual section on the use of PrEP to prevent HIV transmission. And then in a example of timing is everything, The Museum of Contemporary Art is hosting the Many Sides of Pride Film Festival that starts today and runs through Sunday. There are 7 feature-length films and 3 shorts, along with discussions around most of the films. In addition to in-person, most of the tickets are gone, and the festival is also online. You can get to the festival from the MoCA website, and all the tickets are free. MoCA is doing the festival with a grant from the LGBTQ Fund. And so at the fund, coming out of this survey work that we're looking at, we decided to focus more of our grant making on creating greater connections between the LGBT community in Jacksonville and the broader community, as well as deeper connections within the LGBTQ community. And we felt a film festival would be a great way to do this in Jacksonville. While other things are going on as a result of the survey, to finish up, I wanted to offer a few to-dos for you to consider. So stated simply, as employers, make your workplace LGBTQ friendly. And as a business, communicate a welcoming community to the a welcoming message to the LGBT community. So as to specifics, you know, I think each company just has to think about where they are. But so, you know, have you looked at your employment policies? Have you looked at your forms and the terminology? Is it husband and wife or spouse? How do you communicate with your employees? Do you do recognition events for specific subsets of your employees? For example, June's Pride Month, as Ashley mentioned, is that part of your recognition to celebrate? And as business owners, it's really the same point. Do you make it clear that LGBTQ people are welcome and even sought after by your business? Do you participate in the Jasmine Coming Out Breakfast? Do you have a booth at the Jacksonville Pride celebration in October? Fundamentally, what you're doing is communicating who you are as a business. This can again be how your forms are set up. I have to say, when our family signs up for something and I get asked for husband's names and wife's names, I roll my eyes. And it doesn't necessarily mean I'm not going to do it, but rather it signals to me that the company is not thinking or focused on these sets of questions. And how I really describe this, and we talk about it this way at the LGBTQ Fund, is that we seek for inclusion for all, not something special for LGBTQ people or for anyone else, but rather just that there is inclusion and opportunity for all. If anyone is interested, you know, to get connected to resources about that, I'd be happy to help with it after. You could connect, you know, reach out afterwards. So I want to close with a couple of quotes from a 2019 U.S. Chamber of Commerce Foundation paper on business success and growth through LGBT inclusive culture. To attract and retain talent, 80% of the respondents in a 2017 Deloitte study on diversity and inclusion said that inclusion is an important factor in choosing an employer, and 72% said they would leave an organization for one they believe is more inclusive. So I think that is consistent with that survey result I mentioned, where 2 of 3 people said that knowing that somebody is LGBTQ is important for them, you know, in what they're doing. And then finally, studies show that when companies formalize their inclusive workplace practices, they improve their financial standing in both real terms and compared with their industry peers. Excuse me. So there's been studies done where people have looked at how companies in a sector with inclusive policies versus not fare financially over time, and then including for the public companies how their stock performs over time. So I think the message is for companies to do this. It helps hire and retain employees and improving financial performance. And I guess I'd close with, to me, the next question is, if you haven't yet done this, when do we start? So thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Michael. So if you have questions, obviously feel free to turn your camera on, speak up, or if you don't feel comfortable being on camera, you can add them in the chat. So Josh Jolly has added one. It says, how might you suggest an organization go about measuring progress?
Well, so there are, I guess the simple way, excuse me, getting other machinery going here. So, and the heavens have just unleashed, at least.
Yeah.
It's like, it's good. So there, the HRC, which is a national organization in DC, has done basically a checklist for companies to do things, to measure where they are. And we're working with the LGBT Center at UNF to do a simplified ones, because it can take too much resources of smaller companies to really do what the HRC has got set up. And so there's literally a checklist of things that you go down, that I mentioned some of them. What do your policies look like? What do your forms look like? How do you treat customers? Do you participate in community events that are supportive of the LGBTQ community? Are you willing to say that, yes, this is what we're doing and what we believe in?
I've got a question, and you may not have the information available, but the slide that you showed that the respondents answered that they didn't feel like Jacksonville was a welcoming community. How does that compare to other cities in Florida, whether it's Orlando, Tampa, or even in the Southeast? And then I guess maybe a secondary question is, and I think you've addressed this a little bit, but what impact does that have on businesses? I know you had mentioned to Tina, if you have businesses that are interested in coming to Jacksonville, is this something that they're looking at? And so I don't know if you have any data on how Jacksonville compares to other cities of a similar size or similar in geographical area or not.
So I don't know the answer, to how Jacksonville compares to other areas. I will say that, if you look, one way I would say in terms of a community saying that it is LGBTQ friendly is by looking at how the community advertises. And so like a community like Key West for many years has advertised itself as LGBTQ friendly. But if you look at Tampa, St. Pete, how they advertise, you look at Miami, how they advertise, they all specifically say that they're welcoming. And, to be honest, I don't know if Jacksonville is at this point ready, to do an advertising campaign to say that it's LGBTQ friendly. But I think it is a way you can think about, okay, how do communities put out information and advertise about themselves? Then, as to the specifics of what I asked Tina about. So I would say that certainly for national companies coming to Jacksonville, it will be a factor because, they all have policies, and basically they want the community to be inclusive on a broad basis. And I know, and certainly a number of the national companies that have come to Jacksonville have been leaders in trying to help move Jacksonville forward on these issues. I think that it is something that helps make Jacksonville more attractive because ultimately I think one thing I hear is that well, Jacksonville's getting a lot of new business anyway without doing this, so why do we need to do it? And I think it's a fair question. Jacksonville is doing well, and what to me it is about is doing even better. And and in part I would say that to me, while I think that it's wonderful that Amazon has come to Jacksonville, I mean it's a lot of jobs. Ultimately, I think for our community to really grow and prosper, that we would like to see, more of the engineering jobs, more of the high-end finance jobs. And those are things that I think we do better with having an environment that getting people to move to Jacksonville who are diverse, they feel welcomed.
Other questions?
Thank you. I do. Or a comment, please. Dr. Don Tanner is a nurse manager at Baptist Health, and he has written a story about the work that Baptist Health has done to promote LGBTQ inclusion at that facility in our June issue. I think many of you already receive Medical Professionals magazine, but if you do not and would like a complimentary copy, I am putting my website on the chat so that you can absolutely have access to his story and other stories from our community.
Thank you. Thank you, Karen.
That's awesome. Thank you, Karen. I've got a quick question too. So I'm just kind of thinking back about the conversation that we were having prior to, everybody coming on, and the fact that we've got so many people moving from so many places into town. So we've got a lot of New Yorkers, we've got a lot of folks from California moving into town. Do you see that is going to hopefully elevate some of the knowledge? I mean, I see that Tina's talking about businesses and Amazon specifically was mentioned, but I do believe that, if we've got so many people coming from these bigger cities where there's a lot more diversity and a lot more culture and the LGBTQ community is probably embraced a little bit more. Do you see that there may be the chance of a paradigm shift that way too?
Absolutely. No, I mean, I think what is happening as people move to Jacksonville from different places, they bring the things that they know from those places. And a number of those people are, have more experience, more familiarity with the LGBTQ community. And so it's kind of a natural part of it. And, I think largely younger people, one of the things that did kind of, really kind of blew me away a little bit was when I saw those, the Youth Behavioral Risk Survey results where, in 6 years, double the number of kids identified as LGB. And again, I don't quite know what to make of that. I mean, but it is the case that among young people, it is more familiar. I know, so with our 15-year-olds, they have a number of friends. Oh, X, Y, or Z is gay, and it's just like, it's part of the landscape today. So I think the world is changing. I think the business world can play an important role in helping foster that change. And again, not to give anybody anything special, but just to make everybody feel welcome.
Other questions or comments? I've got one, and just really wanted to get your thoughts on this. And again, I don't want to necessarily get political, but if you've read the news, obviously Governor DeSantis signed a law, banning trans females from playing girls' sports. And so I didn't know if you had a comment on that. Obviously, I think I probably know your opinion on what perception that kind of perpetuates. But just if you have a comment on that or not, be interested to hear your opinion on that.
Sure. This is like a place to tread carefully, I guess. So one thing that you can say is this kind of thing is going on around the country right now. And to me, it's very unfortunate. And a piece of the survey results that I didn't really delve into, kind of who is who within the subgroups, but what you can say is that for people who identify as trans, it is really a very tough road to hoe. And so I would say, from the things that I've learned over time about trans people, that they feel that they are who they are as much as any of the rest of us feel who we are. And the cost for them to show who they are is incredibly high. I mean, it's, if you look at the number of trans people who try to kill themselves, it is unhappily almost 1 in 2. If you look at how they do economically, if you look at how often, in particular, trans women are murdered, it's just terrible. And so, I think this started a few years ago, and it's really around political messaging that this men in women's bathrooms is where all this started. And it really is not the case. I mean, if men are going into women's bathrooms, they should be arrested and prosecuted. But this is about someone who may have started with male genitalia, but just does not feel like a man, feels like a woman, and just wants to go to the bathroom in the place where they're comfortable. So for a lot of that, I do think that the question around sports is a more complicated question that I will not claim to be an expert on. I was just reading that, there are standards about how this is done today, because it's a question that's come up around the Olympics, and I don't know exactly what it is, but an athlete has to, show a certain level of chemical thing in their body for a certain period of time to be able to compete as one sex or another. So I think the question is largely already addressed. I think that largely the states that are passing these laws, that it's politics, and it's not about really trying to make the world a better place, because to the extent this is an issue, it's a very tiny issue, and I just think it is not being addressed in a very humane or thoughtful manner. It's just being done as a political point, to be honest.
Yep. Thanks for sharing your opinion. I know obviously it's a very sensitive topic, so. Any other questions or comments? We've got probably about 4 or 5 minutes. So if we have questions, I'd love to continue the discussion. If anyone else has anything to say.
I'm curious. I have a question. It's a very interesting presentation. I was recently in part of a group that was looking at inequities in healthcare. This in particular was based on race, but I was just curious, are there any studies or evidence out there around whether or not LGB receive equitable healthcare services when they go to hospitals or to doctor's offices? Has that been a topic of study?
So that was another slice of some of these survey results that I don't have them at my fingertips. If you, and so you can get to the survey online and take a look, but the answer is yes, and that there are differences. And one is around people just being comfortable telling their healthcare provider who they are. And so that closeted question, is certainly one that results in some disparate healthcare outcomes as one just starting point of it. And, I think that what I was describing that Baptist has been doing, I think when they kind of looked within their organization and said, okay, how can we help address these issues? Then that was, a way they decided to respond. So there are differences. Again, I think that they're worse on the T side than the LGB side, but both of them do show some disparities from the overall population.
Thank you.
Okay, well, we're coming up on the hour, so I want to thank you, Michael, for joining us. Very interesting and informative discussion, and like Ashley said, something that can sometimes be a hard conversation, but it's a very important conversation to have, so we can move forward. And obviously, like you said, I think we all want Jacksonville to be known as a welcoming community, and we want the community to grow and continue to do well. And so thank you for joining us. And as always, our meeting is being recorded, so it'll be available on our website. So if you have anyone that you think may be interested, please, we'll share the link to that, point them to the recording. And like Michael said, if you need or want more information, I'm sure he'd be happy to have a conversation afterwards. Lastly, just to close up, I did again want to remind everybody our meeting next month will be in person. We'll be back at Deerwood Country Club. So that will be on July 8th. So that's actually the second Thursday. Normally we meet on the first Thursday, but with the first Thursday being right around July 4th, for the July meeting, we typically push that back. So we'll be meeting on July 8th at Deerwood Country Club. So please pre-register. And then just as a little bit of a teaser, our August meeting will be our meeting with all of the SBLYs, so the small business leaders of the year from the various councils will be joining us in August, and that will also, of course, be in person. So please look forward to seeing everybody in July and August and every month going forward, hopefully. And if you have questions about the council, please reach out to those that we mentioned, myself included. And I look forward to seeing everybody next month.
Karen's got a question.
Yep.
Jason, I just wanted to point out Carol's excellent question, which is, has the chamber given consideration as to how we can be more inclusive? I think it's an excellent point and something for all of us to consider.
Yeah.
Yeah, so thank you all very much for having me today. This is, I'm honored and really pleased to be able to share the information, because I do think,